I'm Chris Williams from Cyclone Fanatic and a proud Iowa State graduate from the class of 2007. No one shows up like Iowa State fans.
And Cyclones support Cyclones on and off the field.
Your gift can provide scholarships to students, fund groundbreaking research. We can even drum up opportunities for the marching band. Visit MoveWhatMatters.com to learn how you can make an impact today.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Cyclone Fanatic post-game show. I'm your host, Lea Nelson in the Wild Rose Casino Studios. Jeff Woody and Chris Williams will be joining me. Iowa State suffered a tough loss against Arizona State, and we'll get into it, but let's thank some of our sponsors. They're with us through the good times and the bad times, so it's only right to start off with Carl Auto Group. They've been a sponsor of Cyclone Fanatic Podcast Network for nearly 10 years. They have locations all over, so you can count on Carl Auto Group for all of your vehicle needs. Make sure you visit carlautogroup.com today. Our friends over at Keen Project Solutions. Cyclone fans, if you're looking for a career that challenges and inspires you, Keen Project Solutions is celebrating 10 years of innovation, serving ag, industrial, and commercial customers with pride. They are hiring engineers who want to do more than just work. They want to hire people that make a difference. So visit thinkdifferent.keen.com today to apply. Next, our friends over at Central States Roofing. They have been a locally owned business for nearly 56 years and counting. They specialize in commercial projects with offices in Des Moines, Ames, and Fort Dodge. So make sure you visit csroofing.com for more. And then our friends over at Raymond James. If you're looking for trusted financial service, check out Raymond James. They have offices all over as well. And RJ, Clay, and Chase are here to help. So make sure you visit raymondjames.com/Natusoul to learn more. And finally, Aer Lingus College Football Classic. Make sure you mark your calendars for August 23rd, 2025, as Iowa State takes on Kansas State in the Aer Lingus College Football Classic. Make sure you visit cyclones2ireland.com to learn more. That's cyclones2.com. So, Chris, Jeff, in the studio, come on in. That was a tough one, obviously.
Yes.
Obviously. But before we get started and break down that game, I just want you guys to talk about how this season, obviously it's not done yet, but how this season has been such a positive season for Iowa State and how it's still been very memorable. I want to nip the negativity in the butt right off the rip.
Classic Leah. This is why we love you, Leah. Yeah, I mean that's a good place to start. That game sucked, and we'll get into it. And there's a lot of reasons it sucked, but the 10-win thing is very real, and there's nobody going to be happy with that today. I know I'm not. I felt like Iowa State, Jeff, felt like they lost that game at the end of the first half when they went 3 and out, punted it with 2 to go or whatever it was. Skattebo had the big run. And unfortunately, Iowa State's been really good this year, Leo, to your positivity. They've won a lot of games by bouncing back when things went wrong, when overcoming adversity, like the Utah game, the Central Florida game. There were a lot of and that's where it was a fun season, right? Because you could never count this team out. Jeff, I felt like today, unfortunately, the snowball kind of got going down the hill, and we said at halftime, our analysis was pretty spot on that don't freaking turn it over, right? That was the one thing that we thought could really turn this thing into a bad situation. And you inexplicably had 3 turnovers in the first 9 minutes of the third quarter, which statistically is a very difficult thing to do. It doesn't happen very often. And you just left yourself no chance at that point. Really, after the first turnover, no chance for Iowa State to make a comeback against a team like this. Can you hear Jeff?
No, Jeff.
Okay.
I was like, wait, am I losing my mind?
Here we go.
There we
we
go.
go.
Now we have Jeff.
All
right, go ahead, buddy.
When I was brought in, I was on the mute button. So the the middle third of that game was where that game was lost. And it was, if you go from the middle of the second quarter to really the middle of the third quarter, Iowa State goes from being down 7 to being down a bunch. And that momentum swing, it was all about fundamentals in there. And Iowa State lost their head as far as where it's tackling, fitting, ball security, and all of that middle third. It prevented what normally would bring Iowa State back into the game when they've done it earlier in the year, is they would force the other team into mistakes, and they would get it back to be this boring, like, to use a tennis example, you're not going to serve one by Arizona State at 200 miles an hour. So quit trying. Like, get the ball in play, keep everything in just normal fundamental, and win the volleys over time. And you do that. And what they just punked it out of the stadium by just having bad fundamentals the entire time. But like, to answer your question from earlier, as far as a perspective is concerned, this is one of those things that you use then as a data point, and it feels terrible right now, and it should. You just got smoked on national TV when you're the only show in town. And now when people think of Iowa State next year, they're going to think getting break speed off them by Arizona State. But when you look at what Iowa State returns, they're going to be back here sooner rather than later. Is it going to be next year? Who knows? Their conference is 16 deep. But you get Rocco back, you get the whole running back room back, you get all of your tight ends back except Steve-O, you get pretty much the entire offensive line back, you get pretty much the entire defense back outside of some safeties. So, like, it's not like this is the one time Iowa State makes a championship game and they lose and now burn the jerseys, everything sucks. But it is a hard thing to live with, knowing that, like, this is the spotlight and you missed your chance in the spotlight.
Yeah, and the hard part for me, too, is just the setup of all this. Like, you could go 10-2 next year and still not play for the championship because of so many teams in the conference. I'm old enough now, Jeff, you are too, where it's really hard to get here. And, one of these years you want to be able to – I'm watching the celebration right now with the confetti, and it makes me want to vomit. But I also will say this. That I don't think there's a doubt who the best team in the Big 12 is at the end of this. Like, it's Arizona State right now. The way BYU ended the season, Colorado really has never been a complete team. They're flashy. I don't know if I'd call them complete. This is the most complete team in the Big 12. They have the best player in the Big 12. Maybe not. Travis Hunter would like a word. But I knew what we would get from them offensively. It was exactly what I anticipated. I thought their defense, Jeff, was really a load for Iowa State to handle. I don't know. You'd have to watch it back if it was coverages, like what exactly it was. It seemed like Rocco Beck really had a hard time throwing over their line, a lot of deflected passes and stuff like that today. But I give them a lot of credit. Iowa State didn't play well, but that's not the only reason they lost today. They got beat by a good team.
Yeah, they did. And Arizona State did what they needed to do, and Iowa State then, they opened the door themselves. Like, I would give one of those fumbles as a takeaway. I'd give the other one a giveaway, where it's just bad ball security. The interception was off of Tyler Miller's head. And I think as far as like the batted balls, the line of scrimmage, that's a thing. Like, we'll go way more into this in the next couple weeks as far as what Iowa State's going to have to do for next year. But like, a little preview on that is always, you must self-scout yourself. What are the things that got us into trouble? Thing number one for Rocco is batted balls, line of scrimmage, is when you can't run an RPO, when you can't run those drive balls across the middle of the field, which is what they want to do because they're getting tipped down. Drew Brees was shorter than Rocco and has almost as many. I think Brady's the only guy with more passing yards in the NFL. So it is possible to be a shorter guy and still get the ball through the throwing windows. But Rocco's not doing it right now. So how do you solve that problem? Because it's a legitimate problem. Arizona State game plan for that. Utah game plan for that. That's what they were taking advantage of. And then what Iowa State's offense will also have to do is find a way to consistently run the ball when they know you're going to run the ball. Because they weren't able to do that. And that's what would have taken in the second half, or again, the middle third. In the second quarter, Matt Campbell doesn't call timeout towards the end of the first half because his guys were rattled. What settles down a football player or a football team? Run the ball, hold the clock, and be able to say, screw you, we're running the ball, and do it. That's what Arizona State was able to do this today. It's like, if anything ever happened bad, which very little bad happened for Arizona State, but if anything does, you give the ball to Skattebo and say, go get him. Iowa State's probably not, Carson Hansen's probably not going to turn to Cam Skattebo, but if you have the ability to run it when they know you're running it, then it takes everything off the board. It takes the nerves off the board. So I think there's a lot of self-scout that's going to have to go into it. But yeah, again, I mean, half of it is credit to Arizona State. They got some dudes. I'm not, to answer your question in a more roundabout way, as far as defensively what Arizona State did to frustrate Iowa State is less about what Arizona State's defense did and more about the looming threat that's on the sideline that forced Iowa State to play like garbage. It's less about Arizona State's defense and more about Iowa State players looking over and seeing Cam Skattebo and go, I got to be perfect in order for us to win this game. He's
a generational guy. I mean, I'm not supposed to say publicly, I do have a Heisman vote, and he will be on my ballot. You used the definition outstanding. Like, I mean, that guy, I would love to know, like, yards after being touched, like, where he's at compared to anyone else in the country. Like, the guy is unbelievable. You do tend to kind of play differently when you see him over there, right or wrong. I want to comment on one thing because I just think that this is wrong. I think people are completely overreacting. The Haycock's defense is getting crushed right now, and it's funny, like, everybody's like, oh, screw the 3-down linemen in our comments. Jeff, I just completely reject that. I thought the line was fine today. I thought it was the back levels or what let Iowa State down in terms of tackle. What did you see? Am I wrong? I might be wrong. If I'm wrong, tell me. Like, I think people are completely overreacting to that.
First off, fans would never overreact, Chris, ever. And two,
yeah, it was not Dominic Orange and the defensive line I thought played really well.
Yeah, and so a lot of those big runs, like we talked about, a lot of those big runs were someone fit Skattebo, missed a tackle, there's nobody behind him, go. If you add more guys to the box, that is a bigger problem because then you have a linebacker trying to run him down or a defensive lineman trying to run him down. Tackling, regardless of where you do it and who's doing it, tackling has to be better. But I will say this is a game where the linebacker depth being a problem became a huge issue because imagine the physicality that it takes to get Skattebo on the ground. And if you're Cooper Ebel, where's your rest coming from? Who's going to come in and do a reasonably decent job against Cam Skattebo if Cooper Ebel goes to take a breather? No one. Yeah. Brazina, not in there. Caleb Bacon, not in there. Willock hasn't been in there all year. McLaughlin finally got back, so you have McLaughlin on the field, so he's not going to give you a breather. Rylan Barnes has shown that he's an okay player if you put him in positions where he doesn't have to read anything and he can go hit. Who's going to come in for him? So in a game like this, the depth that Iowa State doesn't have because of the injuries through this entire year, if Caleb Bacon was able to go out there and then play 8 or 9 snaps and then run Brazina in there for 8 or 9 snaps and then run Bacon back in there for 8 or 9 snaps, then that becomes a fair matchup when Skattebo has to deal with 245-pound linebackers. But Iowa State having like 4 healthy linebackers, this is the game like Kansas where it was the depth was overmatched and they just couldn't tackle it. So the scheme wasn't the problem. Like this wasn't an X's and O's. This was the Jimmy's and Joe's problem. It just missed tackles all over the place with no depth behind them to even possibly send somebody in to be able to help.
I'll let you handle it from here, Leah. I'm stepping all over you in the host role. I apologize.
I love it.
We all do this. We all overreact. I was mad too. I still am. It sucks. But I don't know. Like the Iowa State's defense has not had a perfect year. It has been far from that. You know, the other thing, it really is incredible to me that they went 10-3 now. And I don't know, Jeff, do you feel like this team ever played its best game? Like as far as putting, I think West Virginia might be, and maybe last week. I don't know. I just, that's what I was hoping for today. The offense really underperformed for me today. Like, to be honest, like I know everybody wants to focus on the defense because Cam Skattebo's putting you on the highlight reels for all the wrong reasons. That offense let them down today, in my mind. Like, they kept putting the defense on the field in bad spots. They couldn't get consistent first downs really after that first couple drives. I'm like, yeah, they settled for that field goal on drive number 2, and that really set the tone the rest of the way. Like, I don't know. Like, I'm not pointing fingers. Like, I think everybody lost the game today for Iowa State. that's kind of how I look back on this right now. I'm starting to look big picture. I don't feel like they ever played a real like 3-level game this year.
I think Baylor and West Virginia were the two games that I would say like
Baylor's a good point.
That's what Iowa State at its best is. When did the defense start have that like breaking point of not being
After
healthy?
3 and outs.
But I was just saying like throughout the season, like big
okay.
macro picture. When did Cale Brazina get hurt?
West Virginia.
When did Malik Verdun break his hand? I think West Virginia, Baylor, somewhere around there.
Right around there.
And so you start losing whatever minimal depth you had. And like, yes, the offense underperformed. But if you get if this defense is at full strength and they play the way they were able to play early in the year with full depth, and you fumble the ball on the 45-yard line, defense gets a 3 and out, they punt, no harm, no foul. The fact that they could not get a stop at all means that when you flip the ball back over, again, 3 turnovers are absolutely inexcusable. So yes, the offense let them down. Inexcusable, 100%, especially because they were not. If it's a diving one-handed interception or something like that, hats off to the defense. But it was bad offensive play. So that notwithstanding, those turnovers are inexcusable. When they possess the ball, I think the offense did okay, but you feel it. Like this is to flip over to a basketball example, or let's use again another softball example. You're down by 5, but every pitcher you keep throwing out there is getting shelled. Offensively, you're going to have to. You don't think that singles are going to do the job anymore. You're going to try and start swinging farther than you want to, and then you start striking out. Not because the hitters are bad, but because you feel what the other team is doing. So like offensively, it wasn't good. The turnovers were horrible. But outside of those turnovers, I think the offense was okay. It was just so harmed by not having the confidence that your defense was going to do anything, that Rocco started aiming everything, that you're trying to bounce and make a run from that should be just 3 yards and possess it into trying to make it 25 and it becomes a negative 1-yard play. So like the offense did let them down, and 3 turnovers were horrible. Outside of those, I'd give the offense a B grade. Defense was just so bad today because the depth was so bad, and Arizona State's playing well that like, it was the negative spiral of full.
I'm not like blaming the offense on the. I'm not making an excuse for the. I'm saying like if you were going to win this game though, and we all kind of knew this, like the offense couldn't do that. Like that is the one thing, because you have to kind of protect your defense a little bit in that way, and they didn't get that today. Go ahead, Lee. I'll throw it back to you. Sorry.
Well, no, you're good. You're good. Never apologize. So what is next for Iowa State in these next couple of weeks?
Well, the portal opens on Monday, so it's going to be a very active. Get ready. I mean, there will be guys at the portal. Like this is college football in 2024. Hopefully, you can limit the amount of big ones. From what I understand, and I don't think there's going to be carnage in the portal for Iowa State. We'll see. But there will be guys where it's like, the one thing in 2024, it's just, I always tell people, players want to play. And if they get the sense that they're not where they want to be on the depth chart, and it's probably not going to change, like there's going to be guys who maybe had a good recruiting rating or whatever who will hit the portal. And fans just have to understand that that's part of the game in 2024. Besides that, they will get their bowl game assignment tomorrow. It'll be Orlando or it's going to be San Antonio. It'll be in the Alamo Bowl against Deion Sanders in Colorado, or it'll be Orlando against maybe like Clemson or Miami or somebody like that. So besides that, I don't really have a lot of insight. I'm getting a lot of this too, like, oh, Iowa State performed so poorly today that they'll get passed over by the Alamo Bowl. I just don't think Bulls think like that anymore. Like, it's an economic decision. If the Alamo Bowl feels like they can make more money with BYU than Iowa State, then they'll take BYU. If they feel like Iowa State will pay off better than BYU will, then they'll take Iowa State. Like that, the days of the Bulls just wanting to get the best matchup have been long gone for over a decade. These bowl games are nothing but a big cash grab, and they're fun. Like they can be a vacation. If it's in San Antonio, we're gonna have a charter for Cyclone Fanatic with We Will, and it will be a blast. And we will go and we will have the time of our lives. And anybody who would go to Orlando would do the same thing. But like I keep getting it in my tweets. Like people are like, "Oh, we played like crap. We're not going to go to a good bowl game," and it really doesn't matter. Like that, you still got second place in the Big 12, which is an accomplishment in its own right. Like you're not going to get kicked around by the bowl people because of that. I just wanted to get that out there because it's just not how it works in 2024. Now, the only question I would have, a lot of people are down here now, and a lot of people are going to Ireland in August. Like, will Iowa State travel as well this year? Or are some people going to be like, hey, we got to save some money at some point? I don't know. We'll see. But that, yeah, it'll be next 48 hours are going to be crazy. A lot of news in the next 48 hours.
Jeff, you can answer this one, but how does Iowa State go from, this tough loss but stay motivated for this bowl game?
I think bowl games, they're a weird thing now. Like it was a big deal when I was playing because that was the only outlet you had to continue to play. And also there weren't a lot of guys from our roster that ended up playing. I think they should have been. I think there should have been more, but there wasn't as much of a perception that Iowa State was going to be able to put guys in the NFL. Well, Brees and Allen and Charlie and all that. Obviously, Brock. That's changed that. So I would say there's probably 5 or 6 guys off this roster, even of the senior class, that are probably going to be draft picks or get an invite to camp. So you have that kind of who's actually going to play, what's your draft grade, what do you feel like is representative of whatever, and who are you playing? Like if Iowa State is playing Colorado, a guy like Darian Porter, use him as an example. He has the opportunity to go one-on-one against Travis Hunter, who's probably going to play because Deion has said all of our guys are going to play, and Shadur Sanders is a quarterback. That's really good film to put on for the NFL. So someone like Porter is going to be really motivated to play in that one and elevate your status. If you're a guy like Higgins or Knoll, who are almost surefire draft picks, and you're playing against a Miami team, and everybody on Miami is they're not playing. You're playing against backup safeties. You're getting a 4th round draft grade. It makes sense to not play. So a lot of it comes into like who are you playing and what's the value to you as a person. But then the rest of it, especially with the Campbell staff, who can we get to play who didn't get to play? Who can we get meaningful snaps of that we need to see, and or reinforce someone that we think, they might be flirting with the portal. They might not feel like they're a big depth chart guy. Well, maybe we can get him a lot more snaps in the bowl game to show that we want to invest in him for the future. So it becomes a lot like roster management and just the ability to continue practicing and get potentially some good film on the next one, on the next opponent. So I don't know. It's a weird time as far as it depends a lot on who you're playing and what that team is compared to you, especially for the NFL guys. But the young guys, it's a big thing. It's a long held story for me that the only time that I got first team snaps was during bowl game prep. So for the young guys, it's a big deal. So it's a weird time now with how little bowls mean, unless you have a really good matchup.
And I think too, man, it's like Jeff said, it's hard telling. I would anticipate more of Iowa State's guys play this year. It just feels like now they're like getting paid, and they are under no obligation to play in these bowl games. But there feels, this team particularly feels very close. Like I could see Higgins and Knoll being like, we want to play with Rocco one more time. Like I could see that. The last time was a little bit, not that it wasn't, but like I remember Mike Rose didn't play and he had been hurt. Like Purdy obviously played there were a lot of those guys who have been kind of like injured and stuff. If anything, it's like Verdon probably won't play, like guys like that who have been injured, but a lot of the guys who you would think wouldn't play in a bowl game are fine. So I don't know. I have no insight on it. I'm sure our reporters, Connor and Rob, are asking about it right now, and they're rolling their eyes at them for doing it and it's really a bad time to ask because they haven't even had time to process the loss, but it's our job to ask those questions. I'm looking forward to next year when these players are finally paid by the schools, and then they have to. Like, it's part of your job. It's part of the season to play in the bowl game. It's not fair to the fans who spend all the money and fund all of this to travel to these bowl games, and you have no idea who's going to play. So I'm looking forward to this era being over with, where guys could just, when guys can just decide they don't want to. And I don't necessarily blame them either. Like if you're,
I agree.
Yeah, like there's reality to all of this. We just need a better system, and that's coming.
Yeah, it's one of those things, like if everybody played and you knew that who you were going to play was going to be their best, then it makes objective sense for you as Higgins, Noel, the guys like that, to go get your number 1 reps against Miami or Colorado or whatever, and then you get more film, it's good matchups. But if the opportunity for them to not play exists, then you might not. And so it's just this weird thing. If everyone's not going to play, don't play. If everyone's going to play. Yeah. It's this weird middle ground that we're in where you might play and you might not.
It's just it's not fun. Like it makes, like, we used to have like these bowl pools, the confidence pools, and like I don't know. I'm throwing darts here. It's like trying to do a Big 12 preseason poll when I don't know, like there's 40 transfers on every team. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know. Today sucked, but I don't want people to lose track of, like, I truly think, Jeff, as we put a T on this whole thing, and I've said this for a year and a half now, before this 10-2 season, that I just look around this Big 12, look at what Arizona State just did, picked 16th. They come into this new conference, they win it, they're going to the college football playoff. Iowa State can be in this position pretty much in a year going forward with the current program. Like, it's in that good of a spot. They feel like they've recruited really well. And I know I've heard a few rumblings of portal guys, specifically at the wide receiver spot, that will be difference makers the second that they come in. This is a really good program right now, and I hope that people, like, still understand that. They're going to have a bad taste in their mouth. Today sucked. There's no doubt about it. But I'm excited to see the GM hat. It's the Hot Stove League coming up, starting on Monday. Let's get after it.
That's a great way to end the show. Thanks again, Chris and Jeff.
Right.
You guys are
That's what I
awesome.
do.
Yeah, that's what I do. Thanks for everyone listening, and thanks again to our sponsors, Carl Auto Group, Keen Project Solutions, Central State Roofing, Raymond James, and Aer Lingus College Football Classic.